Hey everyone, I'm Chris and I'm reviewing every episode of The Office ever, and today we are looking at customer loyalty.
What is it? Can you hold it in your hand? Can you dump it on a woman?
Which is an episode in season 9, apparently. We have Dwight featured in a very Michael-esque story. We have Jim and Pam in a very dramatic story. And we have Erin and Pete's flirting getting very hard to ignore for the rest of The Office. This is Meredith's second wig since the lice episode, which is a nice touch. And yeah.
What am I doing wrong, Brian?
Nothing. You're doing the best you can.
We're gonna have to talk about this guy. So, lots to get to. Let's go.
I understand nothing.
We kick off this episode in the Dunder Code cold opening.
The Dunder Code!
Every time they need to de-age John Krasinski, they just mess up his hair. Years prior to the event of this story, Jim set up an elaborate National Treasure-like prank to keep Dwight busy for the day, looking for the Holy Grail, apparently, like the real Holy Grail. The setup really has so much promise, and it just leaves me disappointed.
I expected more from young Albert.
As the day begins, as in most episodes this season, we have three plot lines quickly establishing themselves. A, Athlead has an important investor coming in that day, and Baby Halpert has a dance recital.
Peter Roy at Bridgeport Capital requested a meeting at lunch.
Can we keep it on the early side, though? I got that thing in Scranton later.
Cece's ballet recital is today.
I hate these things. I love so much about modern society, but I hate these things. B, Dwight's flabbers are gasted when Jim has poached Darryl from underneath him, and Dwight wants to teach Darryl a lesson about loyalty.
Dunder Mifflin loyalty place?
What? Double mocha latte, please? You got it. Just sign your name below, whatever you want.
And C, Pete and Erin's flirting has been noticed by everybody now, and Nellie, fearing Andy's wrath, attempts to try to fix maybe what she sees as wrong that she's done to her boss.
Is it all right for her to flirt with Creed, for example?
Let's try it out.
So starting with Jim's story, the investor has cold feet, and nothing Jim's doing is going his way. I'm not 100% sure what Jim's job in this new startup is. Like, just a couple weeks ago, he was hanging out with Dr. J, then he was interviewing, and then now he's doing investor relations. But I guess if you're like a high up in a startup, everything's your job. But nonetheless, Jim's stuck in business triage and is unable to make it to the dance recital. Which there is this thing where Jim really does want to be there, and everyone Pam talks to about the dance recital has my exact reaction.
Let's get this over with, Pam.
Pam, as established earlier in this episode, is waiting on a call from the powers that be to see if she got this mural gig.
I'm sure as soon as they know, they'll call you.
Senator Lipton helped me submit my design for a new mural on a building downtown. Now I'm just waiting to hear from the selection committee.
And by the way, I don't think the show ever gave us much clarity on what happened after Angela found out that Oscar was gaying her husband. I mean, the accountant is pretty cold when Pam brings up the senator, so I don't know, maybe that's just Angela. While at Cece's dance recital, Pam's phone rings while she's trying to record the video, and she takes a call, which is kind of a social faux pas, as these people say, although they go a little too far.
You're very rude.
Yes, very rude.
The call is confirming that she did get the job. Great. And unfortunately, she screwed up the recording.
User error. I heard it happen to other people.
Jim, meanwhile, fails to win over the investor, causing a lot of stress and additional work moving forward. And as he's decompressing talking to Pam, he's frustrated to learn that she Pammed up the camera work. This then devolves into a very uncomfortable to watch phone-based fight between the two, and they just kind of like hang up. And Pam then breaks the fourth wall.
What am I doing wrong, Brian?
Nothing. You're doing the best you can.
Ryan.
We're going to talk about this, probably more than what I want to, and maybe what you want to, but we're going to talk about it in the deeper meaning and the ratings, don't you worry. In Dwight's story, he has Clark pull up all of the customer complaints on Darryl since Darryl started his second job in Philly.
Everything you got on Darryl since he started working for Jim in the last few weeks. Break it down by keyword. Infuriating, irresponsible.
Clark saying that they have him on Windows 95 back there in the annex will never get old to me, nor will this super old printer. Personally, for me, my very first Windows computer was version 3.1, but Windows 95 is where I fell in love with computers and computer games and writing, and the internet. Just good times.
Estimated time 12 minutes, so this should take about 5 or 10 minutes.
In a very Michael-like move, Dwight calls in a customer to air out a complaint about a day late shipment in order to use it as a thinly veiled lesson about having loyalty. And then Nellie co-ops this whole meeting to deal with her plotline, which we're going to get to in a minute. Dwight then tricks Darryl into running a party delivery of some sort, and all we really see them do is stop at a drive-thru and get burgers.
Burgers.
In which the office writers tip their hat again to internet trends. This specific trend was pretty terrible, and I'm glad somebody got to comment on it in a pretty broad way.
Fire in the hole! You just threw a milkshake in a restaurant where they make minimum wage.
It's a YouTube thing.
Really, at the end of the day, Dwight was just trying to make Darryl laugh and reflect on how good he's at it at Dunder Mifflin.
Did I just hear you laughing with glee?
No, it's clear my throat.
In an attempt to jog a sense of loyalty out of Darryl.
Building loyalty.
Killing royalty.
I nailed that guy.
And replay.
Gotta love following those viral videos on Gato Box, by the way.
I got a big box, yes I do. I got a big box, how about you?
I think you don't know what you're saying.
Like, YouTube exists in this universe.
Anything new on YouTube?
Michael.
Doesn't even need to be good.
Anyway, that leaves us with the Erin, Nellie, and Plop storyline. So after Nellie props up the flirtatious duo to do some black hat social media work, this is like the Wild West back then, she freaks out thinking that they're gonna begin to noodle around and that Andy would blame her for putting their hands together.
Pete and Erin, don't hold back. Our social media presence should be hot, hot, hot. Go at it vigorously.
She uses the loyalty conference to discuss this with the group, and the conversation gets out of hand in like the most typical office way.
Where's this even coming from?
Your feelings for Erin? Probably your heart. And a little bit your penis.
But at the end of it, Erin and Pete are a little too aware now that people are watching them and they're getting self-conscious.
Hey.
Hello, Peter.
And with Nellie thinking that she's done right by the boss and the universe, I guess, she's then thrust into second-guessing herself when the love of her life, apparently, Toby, explains how badly Andy has treated Erin, which then the special project lead pulls the social media team back together, ensuring that they have proper cover to reconvene their work and, you know, like the subtext is their flirtations under the protectful watch of Nellie and her man.
Not everybody has what we have.
Should we talk about how creepy Toby's behavior is in this episode?
Never stop surprising me.
What does a bean mean?
Someone please explain it to Cat.
Okay, so I did some soul searching to really think about what's happening in this plotline and how to cover some of the stuff from this season. Really, this has been in the background of my mind for the last couple of years as I've inched my way closer to season 9. In the process, I stopped watching the show years ago now, and so I am far removed from these sequences, thinking that maybe it would hit a little different when I came back to season 9. But watching these episodes 1 week at a time, only with vague personal memories, along with the collective pop culture online memory, a lot of feelings have arisen out of this. Both decisions that seem like they were really well thought through and reasoned and then executed, and then things that they went with that feel like they don't make a ton of sense. I'm gonna save my commentary for the fourth wall breaking and what they're doing with Jim and Pam, you know, in this episode for the rest of the season, blah, 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 in the ratings. But the overlapping themes of the customer loyalty episode is that sense of loyalty to your partner and really kind of calling into question what the purpose of loyalty is in the first place.
Can you dump it on a woman?
So taking a look at Erin and Pete's flirtation plot, it's very reminiscent, it would seem on purpose, of season 1 and season 2's Jim and Pam flirt sessions. But by focusing the story through the perspective of Nellie, it not only gave the writers something for Catherine Tate to do, which has been sorely lacking,
I barely know how to turn on my computer.
but it provides an outsider's perspective. In other words, the people flirting have no real agency in this story. The only one who has agency is Nellie. Nellie's acting for the most part in the first 3/4 of this episode, out of loyalty to her boss, maybe to keep his favor or just to keep her job. But that is her purpose, until Nellie invokes the idea that Erin should forsake what's making her happy to stay loyal to that which Nellie finds out later is not making Erin happy. Obviously, this calls into question ideas of infidelity and all of that.
I think it would be immoral for Erin to cheat on Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't you cheat on Andy?
Yes, and he didn't like it.
And I'm not going to get into that per se, because that's not really the focus of the episode. It's really just a theme here that is questioning loyalty. Why should we have loyalty to something that is not satisfying us? That's not a question I'm at. I love my wife. These are the questions the office is asking of us. All of this follows us into the Dwight plotline, which not only invokes customer loyalty as the namesake of the episode would suggest, but it really is all just an attempt to demonstrate where Darryl's loyalty should be. Dwight sees loyalty as a matter of the heart.
And a little bit your penis.
But also as a matter of the mind, in which he thinks that good memories would propel loyalty. Now, standing alone, this plotline is super weak and it doesn't actually make a lot of sense, but it seems to be suggesting, same as Erin and Andy, that the good times were the good times. But now, it's not those times. It's time to move on, to be released from that loyalty, which brings us to Jim and Pam. For some viewers of this episode, this is a stark contrast to what we have seen in these characters for years. But this season, the signs have been there. Pam is not happy with Jim's decision to pursue this new business, but she's trying to make it work. It's been difficult, not only with single parent duties, but also with the loneliness and wrestling with these deep feelings of insecurity. Not insecurity that we've seen Pam in the past, by the way. It's not like, does he love me? But it's more of like insecurity in the sense of things have been secure so long. They have been Jim and Pam for forever at this point, locked in together, day in, day out, sitting 3-4 feet away from each other. And now things feel insecure. On the flip side, while Jim's job is everything he's ever wanted, working full-time on a passion career is a very different emotionally and mentally and thus physically draining experience as it is just like being good at a mundane job. And don't forget that stress isn't just the bad stuff. It's all of the stuff, the good, the bad, the complicated, the overthinking, the anxiety. All of that is starting to pile on top of this pretty big crack that he's feeling from today from losing this investor. It's all amounting to a crazy amount of stress. And if the voices from my past have taught me anything, it's that stress doesn't create weakness, it reveals weakness.
I am trying to make everything perfect here, okay? So that you can have everything that you want.
I'm doing this just for me? Is that what I'm doing?
It seems like this drop of stress is all that it took to break this dam of resentment that has been holding this fight back. Maybe not being able to control the outcomes of the day is tipping Jim over the edge to seek some sense of control. And as such, Jim's callous and condescending treatment of Pam because of the recital, like she's just there to serve Jim while he's off doing important things, is probably a dagger to his wife. In one statement, he's both demonstrating that Pam's job was to get the footage and Cece's job was to make him happy.
It's really not that hard to film a video. It's gone. That moment's just gone.
Which is dysfunctional. It's understandable, but, you know, not the way to treat people. Further, Pam is then caught off guard with hurt, and she deflects all of the responsibility back onto Jim, in spite of the fact she's already agreed to these things. The conversation quickly spirals out of control, with neither really listening to what the other is saying, and only looking for chances to gotcha one another, and the conversation just ends with a lot said, but way more unsaid. And then we see why the other two plots work so hard to seed the themes of disloyalty, making us feel like it's okay for Erin to continue flirting with Pete because things aren't going well with Andy. So it's okay to flirt with Pete. Maybe then it's going to be okay for Pam to seek comfort from another man.
Let's turn the cameras off. Seriously, guys.
And further on that, the idea that Darryl is ready to move on in spite of the fact that he really liked what happened back in Scranton, but he's ready for something new in Philly. And because this video is already getting pretty long, I think The Office does a pretty good job later of demonstrating, how to rectify some of these things. So we'll talk about that later. At this point, I'll just leave the final message of this episode is, communicate with empathy. Jim could have just simply lamented how bad his day was going and how frustrated he was that he didn't get to see the video that no one else wanted to watch, but he wanted to watch, and that was a frustrating thing. But instead he blamed Pam and came down pretty hard on her about it. Pam could have also empathized with how hard his day was going. Both of them could have dealt with maybe some of the problems they were experiencing this day when, the stress of the day had worn down a bit. Like when emotions are high, it's not a good time to start dealing with life's problems. And therapy's a thing.
We're gonna need a lot more than counseling.
Let's rate this thing.
This is the worst.
Okay, let's face it, the cold opening has potential to be one of the best of all time. It's like, though, they couldn't decide what to do with this. So they undercut the entire punchline by suggesting some mundane reason for why the Holy Grail was missing. I get frustrated every time I watch this because I don't remember how the punchline ends because it's not memorable. It's not a good joke.
Forget it.
And so every time it starts over, I'm like, oh man, I don't remember this. Where does this go? What's going to happen? Oh yeah, the cup is, it's just, yeah. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 and we'll go from there.
I don't get it.
As for the episode, let's talk about Brian. Breaking the fourth wall in a normal show is super weird, but less so in The Office because we all know that they know they're being filmed.
I know. They know.
Well, they kind of know that they're getting filmed. We'll talk about that later. They played with the fourth wall breaks early in the season, especially with a lot of that hitting the cutting room floor that we've only seen resurrected now from the superfan cuts, but bits made it into the series from time to time. Michael, for example, always seemed to be talking and playing to someone just off camera. According to Andy Green's Oral History of The Office book, the writers played with the idea in season 5 to have a will they won't they flirtatious thing with someone when she was in New York. They ultimately scrapped that, and a little bit of that remains with this guy that everybody hates.
It's Alex.
It's Pam.
But Daniel's seemingly resolute to really upset everybody and break up Jim and Pam actually divided the back of the house over the direction of this couple. It seems, based on the writing testimony in the book, that Daniels really had it full well in mind, even up in this episode, that he was going to get these two to divorce.
Get a divorce. And
that Brian was being injected very much to get in the middle in a very real way between the two. The only thing that stopped this from happening was everyone hated this idea, including the actors, the writers, the producers, the studio, and millions of fans watching the show. Season 9 doesn't necessarily suffer from poor writing, as I've talked about in the last couple field guides. It suffers from Greg Daniels. Hard stop. He tried to turn the show into something that it wasn't, which it had already evolved so many times, from stuffy, boring cringe to redemptive cringe with Michael, to zany antics of post-stress relief Office, to now a dramedy in a way that the show was not before. For real, I can't think of a scene that intends to bring this much dramatic weight to an episode as this scene does. Watching Jim act so douchey and seeing Pam cry, not as a byproduct of a joke like season 1,
You've been ex-punk!
and not just cry alone, but cry into almost the arms of another man. This is not The Office. It obviously is The Office, but you know what I'm saying. This is not what people subscribed to the show for. I have tried to have a rule for judging TV shows and movies it makes it really hard to judge season 9 then. And you've heard me say this before, but I try not to criticize because the writers are telling a story that I don't want them to tell. It's not my story to tell, it's their story to tell. I could criticize how they told it. I can criticize the technical stuff and how they made it and how it came to screen, all of that. But I try not to actually criticize that they're telling a story that I don't want them to. But the end result of this season makes it hard for me to live by that code. The technical proficiency of the way this episode is written is fine. It uses its time very effectively to tell a story that advances the plot. It's got funny moments, but it's a no from me. I'm going to give this one a 1 out of 5, as it's got to bear the brunt of my opinion for incorporating Brian into the series.
Enough.
As well as a dramatic split for Jim and Pam. But that's just what I think of customer loyalty. What are your thoughts? Leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you think about this episode. Don't forget, I am streaming on Wednesday afternoons, evenings on Twitch, so be on the lookout there. Go follow me over there if you want. I want to give a shout out to the fine folks supporting the channel, starting with the Dundies host, Amber Piercy, Anna, Dark Lasagna, and our Inner Circle members, Avery, Heidi and the Una, Jackie Estes, and Mooch. Thank you to the rest of these fine people for supporting the channel. And if you want to support the channel, you can head over to the YouTube membership stuff or the Patreon links I have in the description. Otherwise, you can support the channel just by giving this video a like and subscribe. Next week, we are talking about Junior Salesman, which is an episode I also don't remember existing. Except I think that's the one where Clark takes over Jim's desk. So, yay.